Good afternoon. You are in time for live proceedings from the National Assembly this 23rd day of July 2019. In a short while, we shall be linking up with members of the National Assembly as they engage in matters legislation. The members coming back to the Assembly after 2 weeks short break, and during that time a lot has been happening in addition to them engaging in various businesses as they are mandated, and that is in terms of speaking and interrogating various issues in various House committees. There has also been a debate on the division of a revenue bill, and interestingly listed on the order paper this afternoon is the division of revenue bill, the National Assembly version, bill number 59 of the year 2019. It will be moved by the chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. It will be the first reading of that particular bill. There is also debate expected after that, and even amendments in a committee of the whole House. The same process will be happening in the Senate this afternoon, and this is after senators approved reduction of publication for that particular bill last week, meaning that today, the whole of today, they will dedicate it to discussing and making deliberations on these very pertinent issues. Senators seeking an allocation equitable share of 335 billion shillings, while the National Assembly is proposing that counties be allocated an equitable share of 316.5 billion shillings. There is debate on that amount. Senators sticking to the initial figure, the 335 billion that was proposed by the Commission on Revenue Authority, while the National Assembly wants that amount capped at 316 billion shillings as per talks, mediation talks between the two houses of Parliament. 3 other bills are listed for introduction in the National Assembly this afternoon. The Competition Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 49 of the year 2019. The Insurance Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 50 of the year 2019, that seeks to introduce provisions for protection of policyholders where it says an insurer is in distress and assets are put in statutory management. It empowers the insurance authority to prescribe the manner in which returns will be submitted. It also spells out the penalty for late submissions that shall be payable into the policyholders' compensation fund. Yet another money bill, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 51 of the year 2019, listed for introduction in the National Assembly. It is a bill that has already been submitted to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning, and what it does is formulate proposals as indicated in the budget for the year 2019-2020, speaking to liability and collection of taxes. It also seeks to amend a number of laws, including and not limited to the Privileges and Immunities Act, Cap 179. It seeks to amend the 4th schedule of that particular act.
Developing a version of the bill that may be agreeable to the two houses within the timeline set out in Article 113, Clause 4 of the Constitution. I thank you, honourable members. Members who are making their way, please, if you could do so quickly and take seats. Members making their way in, please, if you could take seats. Honourable members, this particular communication relates to a guidance on consideration of 5 bills emanating from the Senate. Honourable members, as you may recall, on June 25, 2019, I conveyed to the House a message from the Senate regarding the passage of the Impeachment Procedure Bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, the Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Senate Bill number 17 of 2018, the Prevention of Terrorism Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 20 of 2018, the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic and Social Rights Bill, Senate Bill number 27 of 2018, and the T-Bill, Senate Bill number 36 of 2018. Honourable members, following first reading of the 5 bills on June 26, 2019, I did undertake to pronounce my opinion with regard to the money bill as effects of the bills pursuant to Standing Order 143, subsection 2, which provides, and I quote, following first reading, the Speaker shall within reasonable time pronounce his or her opinion contemplated under Article 114, Clause 2 of the Constitution, close the quotes. Now, therefore, I have made the following determinations on the same Senate bills. Number 1, the Impeachment Procedure Bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, the Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Senate Bill number 17 of 2018, the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic and Social Rights Bill, Senate Bill number 27 of 2018, and the T-Bill, Senate Bill number 36 of 2018, do not fall within the meaning of a money bill. As such, they may proceed for second reading in the same manner as a bill originating in the National Assembly is provided for under Standing Order 143, Clause 3. Consequently, the Impeachment Procedure Bill, Senate Bill number 15 of 2018, and the Preservation of Human Dignity and Enforcement of Economic and Social Rights Bill stand referred to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. The Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Senate Bill number 17 of 2018, stands referred to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. And the T-Bill, Senate Bill number 36 of 2018, stands committed to the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock for consideration. Number 2, the Prevention of Terrorism Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 20 of 2018, is a money bill within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. The bill therefore stands referred to the Budget and Appropriations Committee for consideration, identifies on the manner in which the House ought to proceed with it, pursuant to the provisions of Article 109, Clause 5 and 114 of the Constitution, read together with Standing Order 143. Honourable members, the House is thus accordingly guided. I thank you, honourable members. Next order. This one. This one.
Order number 3, messages.
Honourable members, I have the following 2 messages. One being a message from the President, being number 10 of 2019, on the nomination of a person for appointment as chairperson of Board of Directors of the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority. Honourable members, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 42, I wish to convey a message from His Excellency the President relating to the nomination of a person for appointment as chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority. In the message, the President conveys that in exercise of powers conferred by Section 201, Subsection 1, Paragraph A and Subsection 2 of the Fisheries Management and Development Act, number 35 of 2016, as run together with Sections 3 and 5 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, he nominates Mr. Ochieng Beo for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority. In this regard, His Excellency the President seeks the approval of this House on the nominee for appointment to the aforementioned position. Honourable members, Standing Order number 45 requires that upon receipt of notification of nomination for appointments, such nomination shall stand committed to the relevant departmental committee of the House for consideration. Pursuant to the provisions of the same Standing Order, therefore, and paragraph 3 of Standing Order 42, messages from the President, I hereby refer this message to the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock to undertake the necessary approval hearings. Honourable members, the committee is required to table its report in the House within 14 days from the date on which the notification was given. Consequently, I wish to guide the committee and the House as follows. 1, that the committee should notify the nominee and the general public of the time and place for holding the approval hearings in good time. The notification should therefore be made on Wednesday, July 24, 2019, and 2, that the committee should thereafter commence the necessary approval hearings and submit its report to the House on or before Thursday, August 1st, 2019. I thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, that is noise. The second message is a message from the Senate. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 41, I wish to report to the House that I have received 2 messages from the Senate conveying its approval of the mediated versions of the Irrigation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2017, and the Land Value Index Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2018, respectively. The first message reads in part, and I quote, "The Senate, by a resolution passed on Wednesday, 10th July 2019, approved the mediated version of the Irrigation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2017, close the quotes. The second message reads, and I quote, "The Senate, by a resolution passed on Wednesday, July 17, 2019, approved the mediated version of the Land Value Index Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2018, in the form developed by the Mediation Committee," close the quotes. Honourable members will recall that this House had approved the mediated versions of the Irrigation Bill 2017 and the Land Value Index Amendment Bill 2018 on Wednesday, July 3rd, 2019. This therefore concludes the bicameral approval of the bills and paves the way for me to present them to the President for assent in accordance with the provisions of Article 113, Clause 3 of the Constitution. I thank you, honourable members. What's your point of honor, Honourable John Bandi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is on your first communication from the President on the appointment of Ochieng Beo as chair of the Fisheries Board. I know it's a long title, so I may not have read it. But, Mr. Speaker, this arises from, my whip is consulting loudly here. Mr. Speaker, I remember this House passed a law on National Cohesion and Integration Commission, a law which, excuse me, please.
Order members, the members making your way, please allow us to transact business in the House with minimal interruptions.
Mr. Speaker, the law on National Cohesion
Sorry,
and
honourable
Integration
members,
Commission.
even the handshakes are too loud. Please don't overemphasize.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a member who shook another's hand so loudly that thought that it sounded like he was drumming.
I wonder whether that's a genuine handshake. But, Mr. Speaker, the issue I wanted to raise is, I remember we passed as a House National Cohesion and Integration Commission Act, which acts gave Parliament the powers to literally recruit commissioners. And, Mr. Speaker, the courts found that that was unconstitutional, and it was brought back to this House, and we made an amendment which now set in motion the process. Now, Mr. Speaker, on this communication, I know there is an act which we passed conditioning the appointment of the chair of this board to parliamentary approval. But, Mr. Speaker, the practice in this country is that the board chairs are never subjected to approval of Parliament, largely for state corporations. Mr. Speaker, I was just wondering, so that we don't discriminate this officer, not that Ochieng Beo may not pass the vetting process. He has actually interest in fishing from birth. I know he's someone who is so concerned about fishing, and if the vetting is done objectively, I know Ochieng Beo will qualify and will be appointed. But, Mr. Speaker, I was just wondering why we would subject one board chair to a process of a vetting by Parliament, yet all the other parastatals don't go through the same. It can be argued that that is discriminatory. So, Mr. Speaker, I was wondering that you could use your powers and ask this exemption to be made, that we respond to the President that probably that was a mistake that we will correct in law. If anything, the courts asked us not to follow our law and redo the law. So, Mr. Speaker, that is my concern, that we are going to subject this great Kenyan, Ochieng Beo, to an exercise, a process that no other board member or board chair has ever gone through. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, honourable members, I know you have been away for 2 weeks, but therefore I may not have refreshed your memories about the standing orders. The Honourable John Bandi rose in his place claiming to be on a point of order. Therefore, you cannot be now, while seated, be saying point of information, point of order. I know it's because of the 2 weeks, perhaps you may have had a lot of problems with the villagers, but please, just refresh yourselves. The Honourable John Bandi, the law must be followed as it is. Indeed, this particular law was enacted by your good selves in the last Parliament in 2016. But much more importantly, I also do recall that the Honourable John Bandi took active part in the confirmation of a chairman of the board of Nakanda in the 10th Parliament, or is it the 11th Parliament? So I'm sure the two of them, they must apply mutatis mutandis. So, and since it is a law which we passed for ourselves, it will apply until such time as we will amend it. And I think there's really nothing to worry about the nominee. I think for the time being, because I cannot assume powers that I don't have. Under that law, it's only the president that you provided that will have the authority to nominate and appoint with the approval of the National Assembly. That's a specific provision in that act. And since it is so fresh, I think we can still, of course, revisit that and maybe a few others. Yeah. For the time being, I think let's just follow the law as it is. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Honorable Washiali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Jimmy Angwenyi, you can't be the oldest member in the House and is the one who shouts loudest. you know, in fact, the honorable member for, is it West Mogrango, is saying that you're actually making noise. The Honorable Kemosi. Honorable Ashali, please proceed.
Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the leader of Majority Party, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. One, special report of the Auditor General on pending bills of the 47 county governments as at 30th June 2018. Two, legal notice number 102 of 2019 relating to the crop coffee general regulations and the explanatory memorandum from the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Irrigation. Three, legal notice number 103 of 2019 relating to the Public Finance Management Parliamentary Catering Fund regulations 2019 from the Parliamentary Service Commission. Four, legal notice number 108 of 2019 relating to the private security general regulations and the explanatory memorandum from Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. Five, legal notice number 109 of 2019 relating to the adjustment of excise duty rates and the explanatory memorandum from the Kenya Revenue Authority. Six, the reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificates therein. A, Kenya Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat. B, Kenya Leather Development Council. C, State Department for Interior. D, Local Authorities Provident Fund. E, National AIDS Control Council. F, Youth Enterprise Development Fund. G, Machakos University. H, Western Kenya Rice Mills Limited. I, Mwea Rice Mills Limited. J, Kipchapo Tea Factory. K, State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education, vote 1063. L, School Equipment Production Unit. And M, Equalization Fund. Report number 7, Honorable Speaker, is the report of the Auditor General and the financial statements of the youth.
First question by the member for Keses. To edit it? No, we can fix it. We can fix another. So they have received a request for deferment of the question from the member in writing. Just like I've received a request for deferment by the member for Kirinyaga. So those two questions will not be called out. So the first one is by the member for Homa Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm asking question number 324 of 2019. Could the Commission, that is the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, provide details and explain the following? 1, the criteria used to set and review remuneration and benefits for all categories of state officers and public officers in Kenya. 2, the criteria used in the ranking of all categories of state and public officers in Kenya. 3, the remunerations and benefits such as housing, benefits, accommodation or house allowance, mortgages, transport facilities or arrangements, car loans, and sitting allowances set and approved by the Commission gazetted or otherwise.
The intrusion and destruction of wetlands in the country through indiscriminate infills, construction and establishments of structures on water springs and riparian lands, such as the land between Kanyagia and Kiabu roads, land in Emburbur Gong Township area, Kegwa Springs, land near the Northern Bypass flyover, as well as the wetlands at Mujini Stream that runs parallel to Muranga Road in Muranga Town. 3, what action is the ministry taking to reclaim wet and riparian lands and protect them from further encroachments? Thank you, sir.
It ought to be responded to before the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Last question by the member for North Hall. Honorable Chachuganya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to ask question 329 of 2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Energy. What plans does the ministry have to supply power to Marsabit County in line with the government policy to promote industrialization and the other big 4 agendas? 2, Mr. Speaker, when will the ministry construct a power substation and a transmission line from Isiolo to Marsabit County? 3, what budgetary measures has the ministry put in place to ensure the above project is started and completed in timely manner? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, to be deployed before the Committee on Energy. Honourable members, before we move to the next point, allow me to recognize the presence in the Speaker's Gallery and in the public gallery of pupils and students from the following institutions: Day Spring Academy, Juja Constituency, Kiabu County; St. Joseph Friend Meter, Kasarani Constituency, Nairobi County; those from Kibichoi Primary School, Githunguri Constituency, Kiabu County; Victoria Primary School, Kisumu Central, Kisumu County; Sir Dixon's High School, Ebakasi West, Nairobi County; Kianaiguru Primary School, Githunguri Constituency, Kiabu County. They are all welcome to observe the proceedings of the National Assembly this afternoon. Next point to be raised by the member for Trans Nzoia. Member for Trans Nzoia, the Honorable Nangabo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 43, I wish to raise a matter regarding the need to streamline the pension system in the country. Honorable Speaker, a timely goal of saving for retirement is to plan for your future expense. It is believed that approximately 11% of Kenyans rely on pension scheme after retirement. Therefore, the remaining 89% of the employees have no pension plan, making pension saving and the country to fall below. Also concerned that many pensioners and their next of kin will not know how much was engaged period. Furthermore, following up of the benefits, especially by the next of kin, is a big challenge, and it is long period. In the same report, cases even up to period of more than 12 years to resolve, leading to loss of lives and property. I therefore urge the government through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection so as to enable the retirees to enjoy their time after serving the country in different capacities. It is therefore against this background that I seek your leave to raise this matter during day's statement hour. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, the request was, honourable members, the request by the Honourable Janet Nangabo for that statement is for the House to debate that matter, the matter she has raised about pensions and the pensioners and matters incidental thereto during 0 hour. So, and since she had persuaded that it is a matter that can be debated at that time, I direct that the House shall adjourn at 6:30 to allow the Honourable Janet Ngabo to move for debate of that matter at 0 hour, at 6:30 p.m. Remember, it cannot be debated for more than 30 minutes. So it is 6:30. Honorable Janet Nangabo, today you have to be in the House now at 6:30. So if you are not here, then the matter will be spent. So you have to be here to move the House to debate that issue. Very well. It's ordered. Next. What's your point of honor, Honorable Junet?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I am happy to come back from the recess, Mr. Speaker. It was a bit long, but Mr. Speaker, first I am grateful to God that I am back safely from the recess. But Mr. Speaker, while we were on the recess, Mr. Speaker, while we were away, I came across of, Mr. Speaker, a matter of national importance that I thought, Mr. Speaker, that I should bring to your attention when the House resumes at the first sitting, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while you were away, Mr. Speaker, I saw a group of legislators, Mr. Speaker, members of parliament who are demonstrating, Mr. Speaker, on the streets of Nairobi, especially members of parliament of the Senate House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when legislators who are elected by the people to legislate and oversight and represent them demonize their role and leave their houses and chamber of debating and decide to demonstrate now on the road like the way street people do, NGOs and civil society, Mr. Speaker, who don't have a chamber to debate, Mr. Speaker, it is really worrying. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I met a group of demonstrators who are demonstrating on issues of insurance. Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Insurance Brokers Association. Now, the other day, it was the senators. And even among the senators, Mr. Speaker, some of them who are elected to represent the counties, among the demonstrators who are nominated senators who don't even vote, if even you take the division of revenue bill to the floor of the House, they're not allowed to vote, Mr. Speaker, by the Constitution. Now, what are you demonstrating about? And you can't even vote in your house. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that we must condemn as a House and as a legislator. I cannot entertain my colleagues here in this House going out on the street to demonstrate concerning a bill. We have passed here over 300 bills, and you disagree on one, and then you go to the streets to demonstrate. The only demonstrations that are allowed are the ones when we dispute the presidential elections only. The rest, Mr. Speaker, other demonstrations cannot be allowed in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the division of revenue bill is a legislative agenda, Mr. Speaker. It's not a street matter. It's a matter that goes through a legislative process. Publication of bill, first reading, second reading, public participation, committee of the whole House, then goes to the second House, then they also go through that process, then mediation. Mr. Speaker, there is a process that is outlined in law, Mr. Speaker, on how that bill, demonstration is not part of it, Mr. Speaker. I have not come across in both the standing orders of the National Assembly and the next financial year that we have also ruled the judiciary must get 50 billion shillings in this budget. How are you going to stop that from happening? Because you have allowed them to divide money between two governments. Why can they not also divide between three arms of government? Between parliament, executive, and judiciary. They say parliament gets only 10 million, only. and then judicial. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand in my place today here to condemn that act of demonstration, Mr. Speaker. It is uncouth, it's unacceptable, lack of decorum, and it is demeaning the status of the Senate, which in the first place, its position in Constitution was very low. Now they have taken it even lower, Mr. Speaker, than it was in the Constitution. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I condemn it with the strongest term possible, and I must go on record, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving us the opportunity.
Honourable members, honourable members, there's the point raised by the Honourable Junet is one that very, very narrowly is likely to breach our own standing orders. Two wrongs don't make a right. And in this country, there's freedom of association, the freedom to demonstrate, to picket, to even lie on the roads, or even do anything. So now, let us not also try to curtail the freedoms of other Kenyans to walk around on the streets doing whatever they may desire to do, as long as it is within, it's not injurious to other Kenyans and other road users, should they decide to do so. Because the danger of this kind of discussion is that it is likely to touch on the conduct of other members of the other house without substantive motion. You can disagree. Indeed, Honorable Junet, you can condemn, but you may not deny Kenyans the right to, if they decide to do certain things, but only with regard to the issues touching on the budget.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and without seeming to in any way support those who are demonstrating, Honorable Speaker, it is every Kenyan's right to demonstrate, and if there are people who choose to legislate through demonstrations, I think we must give them the benefit of doubt that maybe there's a process of legislating through demonstrations. Honorable Speaker, but more instructively, I wanted your guidance, Honorable Speaker, because in line with the provisions of Article 119, sub-Article 5 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, as I walked into the chamber, I noticed from a TV set along the corridors that in the other house, there was a bill that was being debated that was titled the Division of Revenue Bill, Honorable Speaker. And to the best of my knowledge, Honorable Speaker, as chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, that is not only the originator but the owner of that bill. We have the bill published, Honorable Speaker, but the bill is yet to be considered by the committee. We are actually in the process of awaiting views from members of the public, after which we will table a report and have the bill debated in this House. But I have seen another bill, Honorable Speaker, and I have also read in the media that there is a bill, purportedly a bill published by the Senate that is also titled the Division of Revenue Bill. But considering, Honorable Speaker, the provisions of Article 109, sub-Article 5, Honorable Speaker, which, if you allow me, I may read to the House that a bill may be introduced by any member or committee of the relevant House of Parliament, but a money bill may be introduced only in the National Assembly in accordance with Article 114. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I would seek your guidance as to how, if the time comes, such a purported bill coming from the Senate that with the provisions of Article 114 of the Constitution is in actual fact a money bill but has not originated from this House, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we would seek your guidance as to how we are likely to treat that matter even when the bill is referred to this House, Honorable Speaker. Because as I said, the only eligible bill to be called the Division of Revenue Bill 2019 has been published by the National Assembly and will be, hopefully, if the House Business Committee allows, in the course of the week or next week after we are done with getting views from members of the public, and we table a report, should emanate and originate from this House, Honorable Speaker. And therefore seek your guidance as to how we should treat any other piece of paper purported to be a bill that is titled the Division of Revenue Bill but has not originated from this House, Honorable Speaker. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I seek your guidance.
Sorry, honourable members, before we proceed, allow me to recognize students from St. Thomas Kebulwo High School from Keyo North Constituency, Elgeyo Marakwet County. They are welcome to observe the proceedings. Honourable members, like I said earlier, even before many of you, please, I'm sure you are all actively aware of our standing orders, particularly 87 subsection 5, and also standing order number 89. Because some of the comments will touch on matters which are active. We know they are very active in court. And I say that one wrong does not right another. I mean, two wrongs don't make a right. If you look specifically to standing order number 87(5), and I think for avoidance of doubt, I need to read it out. It says that it shall be out of order for a member to criticize or call to question the proceedings in the Senate or the Speaker's ruling in the Senate, but any debate may be allowed on the structures and the roles of the Senate or Parliament. Roles, structures. So the honour members, let's not call to question any proceedings that may be there. The issues that the Honourable Junaid referred to did not happen in the House. Those were proceedings on the street. So they may not, those ones, I think the Honourable Junaid may be at liberty to call them to question. But I think much more importantly, even if you were to look at the provisions of Article 109, Clause 5, if you read it together with Article 114, you will realize that there is a specific exemption. When you read Article 114, it also says when you are defining money bills, except any bills referred and the bills referred to in Article 218, if you can look at it, is mainly the Division of Revenue Bill and the County Allocation of Revenue Bill. Those two bills. So I think for the time being, let's just wait. Let's not be anticipatory, so that we will deal with the matter when it finally lands before us. I think that's a better way to go, as opposed to calling to question what is happening in the other house when our own standing orders specifically forbid it. So, because when we call to question what is there, then what happens when the matter comes up here? So let's not go that route, and also remember, some of those issues are actually quite active in court. And I have been informed that a few volunteers from the legal profession, from this house, are willing to go and canvass the various issues, some of which the Honourable Junaid alluded to, about particularly when it comes to county matters. There are members of the other house who have no vote when it comes to matters county. They don't count for, when you are doing the counts. They are there to relax. But the Honourable John Bandi, you want to say something?
Mr. Speaker, actually, before you gave us the wise counsel, I wanted to say that under the Part 4, although, Mr. Speaker, my argument has always been and remains that that particular provision refers to a bill. And there are two bills, if you read that Article 114. And the two bills, in my view, to me, I mean, if you read Article 218, and those two bills is the Division of Revenue and County Allocation. And if the reference is to a bill, my understanding it should be county allocation of revenue. But since the Supreme Court had pronounced itself in the form of advisory opinion, we can treat it that both bills are referred to and that either house can originate the bill. But let us deal with it, Mr. Speaker, in my view.
And make laws. That is a power that has been given to you by the sovereign to legislate. So I don't know whether we want to send that power to some other arm of government. I agree with you, Honorable Amolo. Honorable Kaluma.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are one of the three arms of government. And what I wanted to emphasize is what Honorable Amolo has said. That to me, Mr. Speaker, we are behaving in a manner that over time we would have weakened Parliament so fundamentally. Mr. Speaker, as an arm of government, we cannot appear to be running to another arm of government to solve issues which are so clearly provided and prescribed in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, my gratitude is that on our part, we have not gone to court. On our part, we have not gone to court. I think we would only urge our brothers in the Senate to avoid rushing to court over issues which concern Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is that we have one Parliament with two houses. I've personally never imagined a situation where either House of Parliament, goes to court against the other. But, Mr. Speaker, what is concerning me, and the only issue which is not addressed, is that the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee has indicated we have published another division of revenue bill. We have published another division of revenue bill. And if I remember, Mr. Speaker, we had transacted the matter of division of revenue bill and we had enacted it. And Mr. Speaker, I'm acutely aware of the provisions of Article 93, Sub-Article 2, which states, Mr. Speaker, that in as much as we are two separate houses of one Parliament, those two houses have respective roles. And Mr. Speaker, those respective roles are then specified in Article 95 and Article 96. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to draw your attention as a matter over which you can give guidance to the provisions of Article 95, Sub-Article 4A, read against the provisions of Article 96, Sub-Article 3. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the provisions of Article 95, Sub-Article 4A, the matter of division of revenue is located in this House very expressly. If you look at 96, Sub-Article 3, the matter of county allocation of revenue, Mr. Speaker, is located in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I thank you under your leadership since we started this Parliament under the new Constitution. I've never seen this House on any single occasion other than in giving the approvals contemplated under the Constitution seek to transact the matter of county allocation of revenue. When this House exercises its legislative mandate, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution says National Assembly enacts legislation in accordance with the Constitution. The Senate participates in a lawmaking function relating to bills concerning counties. Mr. Speaker, we so far do not have a statute defining this participation, whether by the Senate or by the members of the public. Mr. Speaker, are we redoing the division of revenue bill, Mr. Speaker? Because the Supreme Court said another time on an advisory opinion that this can be transacted between the two houses against the clear stipulations of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, in my view, we would be ceding much of the authority, and I don't think the people of Kenya were fools. There is a reason as to why the division of revenue is the only law mentioned by name under Article 95. And my thinking, Mr. Speaker, is that this is so serious a bill to expose to the possibility of disagreement between two houses. Are we going to wait for the courts to promulgate a new constitution for Kenyans in terms of what Kenyans have already made a constitution on? Or how do we move? Because, Mr. Speaker, approaching it in the manner I see being suggested, I see order number 9 is suggesting we are transacting another one. It would be like we have ceded the authority which only the people of Kenya have and exercised in making this constitution to the courts. I mean, Article 95, sub-article 4A is so clear. Division of revenue here is here. Are we going to, subject the country to the situation in which we are because one house of parliament is extending its range of legislation beyond the limitations and restrictions the people of Kenya put? I think in as much as some of these matters could be in court, Mr. Speaker, I think there is a way in which as a house we must speak very clearly. To me, Mr. Speaker, we have transacted the matter of division of revenue. And it is on that account, in as much as I could be contemplating debate, I would personally be opposed to redoing what we have done. We have done and we have enacted the division of revenue. We are funked as official. Let us not bend as a house to the encroachment of our constitutional mandate by all bodies. We will not be able to do much, Mr. Speaker. I would request for your directions at that opportune moment when that second bill is moved. I thank you.
Sorry, Honour members, I think this matter is, we may not be able to really conclude it at this sitting, given that the bill referred to by the Honourable Kaluma as having been dealt with by this House was subjected to another process provided for in Article 112 and 113. Articles 112 and 113, which is the mediation process, and the bill then collapsed. And if you recall, the Honorable Peter Kaluma, even in the last parliament, I did express my reservations about a situation in which the division of revenue bill can be subjected to the uncertainties of mediation, given its very pivotal role of vertical division of revenue between the two levels of government, which is what indeed is provided for in 95(4)(a). And therefore, it's a matter that is, since they are at a different forum, because we will be speaking to ourselves here. So, Honourable members, I would suggest that we let the matter rest there and allow that other forum to present itself where these arguments can be advanced. Of course, I am always acutely aware that I have no vote. So it is you members who make the decision. Let's go to the next order.
Order number 8, motion. Report on the inquiry into the proposed Kenya Airways privately initiated investment proposal to Kenya Airports Authority. Question to be put.
Honourable members, debate on this motion was concluded. Member for Uasin-Gishu. Debate on this motion was concluded, and what remained was a question to be put, which I hereby do. This House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on the inquiry into the proposed Kenya Airways privately initiated investment proposal to Kenya Airports Authority, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 18, 2019. Will as many as that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as the contrary opinion say no? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the Division of Revenue, number 2, Bill, National Assembly Bill number 59 of 2019, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the equitable division of revenue raised nationally between the national and county governments in 2019-2020 financial year and for connected purposes. Order number 10, the Competition Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 49 of 2019, first reading. A bill for A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Competition Act.
Next order.
Order number 11, the Insurance Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 50 of 2019, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Insurance Act.
Next order.
Order number 12, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 51 of 2019, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the law relating to various taxes and duties and for matters incidental thereto.
Honourable members, I wish to inform the House that the business appearing as under number 13, numbers 13 and 14 has been deferred on account that there has been an invitation from the public to present views to the Budget and Appropriations Committee between today and tomorrow, and therefore that business may not be considered until Thursday. There is public information in the media for presentation of views on that bill, which is the Division of Revenue Bill, the second one. So under business appearing as order number 13 and order number 14 is deferred. Move to the next order.
Order number 15, motion, inquiry into allocation of land in Committee and Ma Forest, resumption of debate interrupted on Thursday, June 27, 2019.
Honourable members, including those who have finished their business for today, those who are taking off. This motion was moved, and just for information of members who may be desirous of contributing, this is the report of the Departmental Committee on on the inquiry into a complaint by a committee and Mar Forest Squatters Association regarding allocation of land LR number 8998390 in committee and Mar Forest, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 18, 2019. Yes, I wanted to get the number correct. It's 8390. LR number 8390. The motion was moved by the chair of the committee, the Honorable Nyamai, seconded by the Honorable Kimani Ngunjiri, and therefore the motion is available to any member desirous of contributing. And I go by what is, I hope everybody who has their cards desires to contribute. The Honorable Murugara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the Committee of Lands into the complaint by the associations that are listed in this report. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through this report, and I do confirm that, in my own estimation and opinion, the Committee on Lands has done a good job, first and foremost, in establishing the reasons behind the complaint. While it is very clear that the persons who have complained were actually, and some of them are squatters, there are valid reasons as to why they became squatters, and this was not out of their own volition or out of desire to acquire land that belongs to the government. It is born out of reasons which were beyond their control, and they found themselves by similar circumstances are also resettled, and their problem is solved once and for all. With those remarks, I do support this report and urge that it be adopted by this House. Thank you very much.
Member for Rarienda, you want to contribute to this? I can see your name not on this. Member for Ndiwa is on this. You know, I'm trying to look at the screen. Member for Baringo County. You want to contribute to this? Very well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think I want to concur with my colleague here about the displacement of his members, which is something that is happening countrywide. When we have people who are displaced, Mr. Speaker, sir, and they are allocated land that is part of forestry, somehow the allocation doesn't take long before the people are actually asked to get out of the forest because of the gazettement of that land which has not been done. It is important not to cheat the public. It is good if we have agreed to actually give land to people who have been displaced internally. It is important to follow the due process and allow them to have the land legally so that with the time, they don't stay to be facing problems. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, when people are left in that manner and they are not sure when they are going to be displaced again, even economically they cannot develop. You will go to that area, you will realize they are not even building permanent houses. And these issues, they are all over. I can also say an issue which is in Baringo County, Baringo South specifically, a place called Mochongwe. People there are staying with a lot of, they are always worried because they don't have title deeds of that land. The land already is a government land before, and they were given this land, but they are staying unknowingly. They are not sure of what will happen with them next. When they hear the government want to reforestate, somehow they think sooner or later they will be affected. And so I want to urge the government, as my colleague has said, that let's consider helping these people once and for all. Because if we remember, 1992 to date is quite some time to leave somebody in an uncertain manner to this day. Because you can imagine a child who was born then to date is an adult. And this adult up to date does not even know where their home is, do not have a permanent home. So for me, I want to actually ask the Land Commission, and we know they are forming it soon, that when they get into that office, let's consider settling our people once and for all. And for Baringo County, where I've mentioned, we also would want, when this effect is done in Kiambu, should be done also to the people of Baringo County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Member for Ganze.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to demonstrate my support to this report. Mr. Speaker, even though people have been complaining about the nature of doing business during the Kano regime, in this report, Mr. Speaker, it has very clear information showing, exhibiting that the then government followed all the due process in making sure that all the residents, all the complainants were getting this land from the forest, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've looked at how when I was going through this report, I went through how the then provincial commissioner handled this issue by taking it to the County Council of Kiambu, and even how the leases were registered then. So these are very clear illustration that the landless were being considered so as to solve this problem. Mr. Speaker, I feel the House should adopt this report so that at least these residents should also be in a position to get somewhere where they can call home and settle so that at least they can be productive in this nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I stand to support the report and call upon my colleagues to make the same considerations so as to solve the challenge that we have been having. Thank you.
Member for Kiambu.
Where vehicles were being dismembered after they were stolen in Nairobi. It was a center for activities of thugs and thieves who were stealing from Nairobi. And they were causing a lot of insecurity in the area. So when in the 1980s, the former President Moi decided to give out this land to the people of Kiambu, to the squatters of Kiambu, he was solving two problems. First is to get rid of this workshop that was being used by thugs to dismember vehicles and to cause anarchy to the people of Nairobi and people of Kiambu. The second solution, Mr. Speaker, was to solve the squatter problem that was going on in Kiambu. It was a cause of celebration for people of Kiambu and people of Nairobi. So the people of the forest department, they left the forest, it was subdivided, and it was given to the squatters. After a couple of years, Mr. Speaker, the forest department came back and claimed that this land was theirs, simply because after orders were given for them to give up the land to the squatters, they did not follow the due process. They did not follow the lay-down procedure to hand over this land to the people of Kiambu. And now they were using those same weaknesses to claim that the forest was not degazetted in the proper way. And that is why today I would like to thank the Departmental Committee on Lands, because they were able to trace these steps and found out that the squatters had no problem. The squatters had done what they were supposed to do, but it was the forest department that was on the wrong. And they wanted to use that, the wrong that they had caused, to claim back this piece of land. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support this report, and I would also like to urge other members to support this report, because it is going to solve a serious problem that has been going on in Kiambu Committee. Mr. Speaker, the people of this area, the so-called squatters, have already built in their pieces of lands that were allocated to them. They have sunk boreholes. They have established a cemetery. My CDF committee have built a school from class 1 to class 8. How can we then say this is a forest? How can we say that it does not belong to the people of Kiambu? Mr. Speaker, I would like to urge people, members, to support this report so that the people of Kiambu, the squatters who were allocated this piece of land, can be able to enjoy what they were given by the government of the day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support the report.
Member for Makueni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to support this very important report by the Committee of Lands. Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity to share with some of the members of this association when they came to Parliament, and I learned that, just as the report did, that following the clashes in 1992 during the general election, these particular people were displaced from Rift Valley and were now living in Kirigiti Stadium. And in 1995, after having stayed there with their families for 3 years, the former President Moi issued an executive order through a DC and was communicated to the Kiambu County Council, and these people were subsequently moved to this new land, which was part of the forest. And what happened then, there was no degazettement. And that's why this committee has said that this particular land then now should be degazetted as a forest for several reasons. One being that there is a diverse possession of land. They have lived there over 12 years. Two, government has already developed that particular area. You have had the local member of parliament has done schools with the CDF. 4, there are people already buried in their homes where they have settled for a long time. And 5, it's no longer a forest. And therefore, the only honorable thing to do is to have it degazetted, and these people are located the piece of land, and they have already been given title deeds already, Mr. Speaker. But the validity of that title deed can only be acquired when this degazettement happens, so that now this title deeds becomes valid, because although they do exist and the title deeds are in the names of respective members of the association, Mr. Speaker, then we need to regularize. We need to do an act in law so that the title deeds have no further queries in law, and that their validity can be ascertained, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that the committee did a very good thing to attend to this petition and go into its details and think about the plight of Kenyans, and especially, Mr. Speaker, and we hope it will never happen again in this country. For quite a number of years, there were clashes after elections that people will be displaced. And in a lot of times, people have never gone back to the land, even up to today, even up to the 2008 elections violence. People have never gone back to the land they have a title deed on. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are free to settle in any part of a country called Kenya. And also, when an act of goodwill like this has happened, Mr. Speaker, this House really has no business reversing the goodies already guaranteed by our Constitution for the benefit of Kenyans. And therefore, we have seen one of the side effects and one of the worst cases of election violence, and we've gone through it several times. We've even been to The Hague and back. And Mr. Speaker, through this particular lesson, it should never happen again in this country that people are displaced. It has not only happened in Rift Valley and Central Province, and this particular case we are dealing with, it has happened in the coastal regions, Mr. Speaker, and many other parts of the country whereby people wait for an opportunity of election violence, and then they take that opportunity to displace people from land they have been settling in and they've been farming probably all their life, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I really want to thank the committee for the good proposals it has made. And I believe this will be implemented, the recommendations will be implemented with immediate effect, bearing in mind now we are expecting a new National Land Commission, which has this mandate, and it is the one to degazette that particular forest, is the one with the force of law right now. And having approached Parliament also, without having missed out the option to go to court, I believe Parliament will be perfectly in order, Mr. Speaker, to have these recommendations adopted, and having been adopted, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that these particular Kenyans are settled and their rights are no longer violated, Mr. Speaker. And I believe after the House has made sure and has recommended and has settled, if this particular human rights abuse, Mr. Speaker, continues, then they still have an option to file a further petition at the High Court for their rights to be enforced, and any abuse of the human rights of this particular association members to be enforced through the High Court. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, as a Parliament, will do very well once we pass this report, so that these particular people can be assisted and they can live peacefully in the land they already have title deeds. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support.
Honourable members, you'll indicate if your request here is to contribute to this, or it is with regard to other business, so that I may not give you time, because I can see you are still having some hangovers from the constituencies. But member from where?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I arise to support this report and recommend the Committee on Lands for taking time to understand the situation in this particular settlement, Mr. Speaker. I happen to have had a chance to visit this particular settlement, and a number of things are very clear, Mr. Speaker, that one, there is no reverse to the settlement in that area. Two, a lot of public and private investment has already been made in that area, and therefore it's good that the committee recommends that quick action be taken to settle people who are already there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if that is not done, definitely we are heading to conflicts in that particular settlement, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an example of a delayed decision and action on the part of the government, Mr. Speaker, where things would have been done in a more easier manner. When this settlement was started, Mr. Speaker, if a quick decision was made, we would not be in the situation that we are in now, trying to understand who is the owner of the land and trying to settle these people. The settlement will not be easy, Mr. Speaker, because other people have already come in, and therefore to get the right people now will be an exercise that we would have avoided in the past, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this land is an example or is similar to many other cases that we have in this country. Decisions that are delayed, actions that are never taken, and because of that, a lot of complication has arisen to some and to similar settlement, Mr. Speaker. In my own constituency, we have a settlement by name South Ngariama settlement. It's now many years since people settled there, Mr. Speaker. Action is not being taken. People are still waiting for legal documents for occupancy. And in the process, some other people are also coming in to grab both private and public land, complicating the issues, Mr. Speaker. And it is evident that when we finally move in to issue title deeds to these people, there will be a lot of complication, and the matter will now move from land to security, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I urge that the speed at which the committee moved to settle or to come up with this report, Mr. Speaker, they should also move with speed to move into my place, come up with a report on the South Ngariama launching settlement scheme, and also, Mr. Speaker, look at another land referred to as Mwea launching scheme. For many years, many years, there has been conflicts in that particular land relating to both the counties of Embu and county of Kirinyaga. This is an issue I believe, and I have always believed, that we can easily settle, easily sort out, and be able to come up with a settlement formula that would avoid conflicts, Mr. Speaker. But continued delay, as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing that more and more occupancy of that particular land is taking place. People are coming in from elsewhere, they are settling there, and therefore to sort out that problem will be another big problem, Mr. Speaker. And therefore I do hope and wish that our good committee that has done a very good job in coming up with this particular report will move into similar schemes that are showing indicators of conflicts, Mr. Speaker, so that we can avoid loss of lives, we can avoid loss of resources and properties, both public, private investments that have been done by our own government using public resources, Mr. Speaker. I would therefore urge that we all support this report and ask the Committee on Lands to now move on to the next, because there are many issues relating to land in this country, which, if not sorted, Mr. Speaker, will only resort to loss of lives and property that can be prevented today. I support this report, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Tuwei. Next. Not next, sorry. Honorable Gonjiri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report by the Lands Committee. I especially want to congratulate them for the speed at which that they have actually come up with this report. That is quite commendable. I also want to congratulate them for especially the recommendations. And I was just looking through the recommendations, Mr. Speaker. The issue that has been raised by some of my colleagues on the delays, this is a 1992 issue. We're talking about a case that goes back over 25 years. And sometimes you worry that even as you're doing allotee letters now, as you're discussing about who is going to get those letters, are we actually talking about the same people who were supposed to get this land in 1992? Mr. Speaker, this should also serve as indictment to government, because sometimes some of these delays in decisions, in the execution of a decision from when it is made, actually end up causing much more harm than good. Because if this had been done immediately, it was determined it could be done, we would not have a situation like we are having now, that we are having 4 groups that are all laying claim to this land. And I'm sure that in each of these groups there are genuine people. But you'll find that the group that was actually the focus of this decision in 1992 could have morphed into something different. Mr. Speaker, it is also important for us to flag the issue of insecurity that the committee has identified. That, Mr. Speaker, if they continue delaying this process, they are actually creating an environment that could lead to a lot of insecurity in that general area within Kiambu. But finally, Mr. Speaker, there's also something that we are not discussing. And I think it's a fundamental issue that we need to think about as a House, even as we adapt this report. Mr. Speaker, we have very many cases of internally displaced people being allocated land after issues related to political violence. At what point are we going to draw a line, Mr. Speaker? In Nyeri town, up to this moment, we are still hosting IDPs of various post-election violence incidences. Mr. Speaker, the decision to allocate land to internally displaced people is also something we need to think about, because it looks like we are affirming the act of actually displacing people from their land. And Mr. Speaker, as a House, we will need to think very seriously about this decision by government, that after every election where people have been internally displaced, government then goes and allocates land to them and moves them somewhere else. Mr. Speaker, what happens to the land that they occupied before? Are we affirming what is actually essentially a crime? Because the people who are displacing these people are committing a crime. Mr. Speaker, as a House, it is also going to be important for us to discuss this issue, because we can't, if we are allocating land to people who actually didn't have land before, then we need to ask ourselves why we are doing it. Why are we allocating land to people who didn't have land before? If we are allocating land to people who had land before, we have to ask ourselves, what happened to their land? So this, Mr. Speaker, is also a situation. This report also introduces an issue that we need to think about as Kenyans and as leaders of this country who have been elected to represent people. We really must look for an opportunity to have a discussion about how long or where are we going to draw a line that says that you cannot internally displace people anymore because they are going to be moved by government and allocated places to stay thereafter. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Bonandi. Member for Nandi, Dr. Tum Chebet.
Honorable Speaker, I stand to support this motion. In the said land in committee, there are homes and facilities. And Honorable Speaker, we cannot disrupt our children who are going to school. So there is need to honor what the former heads of states did. Like this land, I'm told, was given by President Moy, and there are many other lands like the Mau Forest. We need to settle those people so that the children are not disrupted from school. So I support this motion because they have developed, they have used their money to develop the land. So the people of Kenya should enjoy where they are staying, their children should go to school, and the government has to take care of those children. There is a rule which says when you stay in any land for 12 years, that land should belong to you. So those people are entitled to that land. They need not be disrupted. And the issue of squatters in this country has to be looked into in the near future so that our people stay peacefully wherever they are. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Igembe Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to comment on this report, which I hereby, Mr. Speaker, stand to support. Mr. Speaker, as we have always said in this August House, and we usually say, land is an emotive issue, which needs to be looked critically. But let me thank the committee for coming up with this report and came out boldly to ask the government to reset that particular piece of land so that the people who have been occupying there can enjoy living there without any problems, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in as much as we say we want to improve the forest cover in our country, in as much as we want to have public land conserved, there are some areas, Mr. Speaker, where we have to look at the interest of the people who occupy the same land, the interest of the citizens of this country who need to be housed and also accommodated in the land which the country has, so that they can live happily in the country of their motherland. Mr. Speaker, if one has been given a piece of land and you have developed that piece of land and you have done all what we have heard even the area MP talk of, Mheshimiwa Jomo, I would say it's immoral for the forest department or the government to go out and say that they want to evict these people. Because they were not trying to evict them from forest, but they were trying to evict them from their houses they have put up and they have lived there and they have buried even their kins there. Mr. Speaker, these issues are across the country. And more so they happen when somebody somewhere sleeps on the job, especially in the government circles, where they are supposed to do things faster. If the land was allocated, all the necessary documentation should have done from the word go, so that at least everybody got a state audit and the disgazettement done, so that the future officers who end the forest department could identify where their boundaries go. So whoever was there at the time of hiving this part of the forest to the residents of committee, they should have gone back to the drawing board again. They go to the books and gazette and hive that particular land to the people they were given, so that at least people can enjoy their rights without any harassment. Mr. Speaker, this is across the country. There are many other lands like this which is happening. We have a piece of chunk of land in Meru County called Nyambene Conservancy, which was hived by the former county council so that they can extend or enlarge the park. But, Mr. Speaker, we have been arguing. We have got Meru National Park, which is so huge, so diverse that even if they bring all the animals in Kenya, they can never fill that park. But somebody went out of his way to get another big chunk of land where people have already settled, which is our main grazing area, and the same areas which they want to extend the national park with. But we are saying no, they should discuss it the same, so that these people can live in these places, so that they can graze their cows, they can farm, because it is just next to Uasonyiro River, and it is a very fertile land. Equally, there are many other places like this, Mr. Speaker, in this country. Let the department, or the Minister of Lands, go down to the books and react or act upon the recommendation of our committee, or the committee which does this good job, and the many others which are in similar situations, so that we can stop getting these complaints in the future, and we can harmonize all the land documentation in this country. I support you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mwashetani, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to support this report, which has been tabled by the Committee of Lands. Mr. Speaker, this issue came to our table as a complaint, and then we picked it as a committee. We decided to go to the ground so that we can interact with the people who have been affected. Mr. Speaker, we managed to interact with the squatters who were there, and basically it was an association that was there, and they are the ones who brought this petition. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that raised complaint from 4 groups. And the 4 groups, one of them is Committee Forest Quarters Association. Mr. Speaker, the other one is Committee Ame Development Association, Muungano Committee Group Association, and Development Welfare Group. Mr. Speaker, when we went to the site, Mr. Speaker, we found that the area is more or so very much populated. The land that we are talking about, the 300 acres, I think it's only about 15% which is not occupied. So looking at the investment which have been done by the members of parliament who have been there, because there are schools which are there are hospitals which have been constructed, and basically it's an area that for sure, if we don't act very fast, Mr. Speaker, then will affect so many people who are living there. Mr. Speaker, this is a presidential order which was given.
A lot of issues in my area. Therefore, what I want to say, the reasons why I'm supporting this bill is that to avoid more confusion and conflicts, we need to strengthen the institutions which were put in place to govern land. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me that opportunity.
Sorry, honour members. When you contribute for 2 minutes, it's very difficult to know whether you are saying anything. Honourable member for, where is this? Igembe South. Or it's not about this one?
It is about this one, Mr.
Okay,
Speaker.
okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
But let me just tell you that you have up to 10 minutes.
I raise up to support this. That was not done, Mr. Speaker, as the way His Excellency the President and directed then. And Mr. Speaker, many of the cartels, we can see from the report that they colluded with the ministry, with the commission, Mr. Speaker, whereby they were given title deeds, Mr. Speaker, and these title deeds, Mr. Speaker, made the people who the president intended they being given the land, Mr. Speaker, to be left out, Mr. Speaker. So it is good when the directive is given, it is good for the body which is in charge and the body which the president has directed to take that mandate, to take it seriously. Because in this land, Mr. Speaker, many of the property, if it will be done according to what the president and directed, Mr. Speaker, we will tend losing a lot of money which was invested to construct chiefs' camps, schools, Mr. Speaker, which are in that land, churches, Mr. Speaker, which are there. We will tend losing them. And this will come as a result of the commission and the ministry which was directed to give these squatters land, failing to do as what they were directed by the president, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is just one of the one sample in many occasions where in the Republic, Mr. Speaker, you will see there is many directives which are given to be implemented, and they are not done so. And at the same time, Mr. Speaker, this due to failure of implementing the directive, you see it tends creating conflict amongst the people. So, Mr. Speaker, it is good when the report like this is collected. It is good for the ministry now to take it serious and to do according to what they were requesting or to what they were supposed to do then. Because here there is around 4 bodies which are arguing that they were the owners or they were the rightful people to own this land which was directed, Mr. Speaker, and it is the right time. The commission and the body which is in charge to implement it without favoring those people whom they colluded with. And maybe if, because even investigation can be done, Mr. Speaker, if they are found capable of colluding with some specific, maybe rich people, or intended to invade this land, Mr. Speaker, they are supposed to be held responsible and accountable of misusing the public resource. So it is good for the ministers to go faster and negotiate that piece of land so that the squatters, Mr. Speaker, can be resettled in their normal land, Mr. Speaker. For example, in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I owned a Meru National Park, the place called Adiro, Mr. Speaker. There is a very big land which is encroached by the Kenya wildlife. And Mr. Speaker, the people from that place, they keep urging the government together with the Kenya wildlife to give them back their land, Mr. Speaker. But it is something which, Mr. Speaker, from maybe 1998, Mr. Speaker, something which has not yet come to conclusion. So it is good. When there is something of sort and the ministry is supposed to give a certain directive, Mr. Speaker, it is good that they act accordingly so that the people can be served well, because they are the ones who give them the mandate. If were it not for the citizen, Mr. Speaker, they could not be in position or they could not be serving, Mr. Speaker. So it is good to give the services to the Kenyan people so that, Mr. Speaker, they can be in a good moment to invest their resources, Mr. Speaker. In those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the committee. Thank you.
Member for Luanda.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to speak to this particular report. Honorable Speaker, I note that the majority of my colleagues here have spoken in support of the report. But I have taken note, and we all swear to protect, then, Honorable Speaker, we shall be failing. The committee has done a good job, but I expect we as Kenyans, we must ask ourselves these questions. These people who carry pangas during elections in the pretense that they have lost, or whatever reason they might have, to displace others for whatever reason, these people must be brought to book. And this committee, the Committee of Lands in this House, has that duty to follow that tree, up to the fruit of the proper fruit of that displacement, and to restitute these people where they belong. I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, because this country is becoming a desert. We are cutting down trees every day, and yet in every international forum we go to for climate change, we pretend that we are committed to reforestation, to forestation of our land. Yet here we are saying that we cut down forests, we allow people who have invaded a forest to continue staying on that land because we are displaced from somewhere else. Yet we are not answering the critical question of where were these people displaced from before? And if these people are displaced, who are these others who displaced them? Are we saying that there are some super Kenyans who can displace one, take their land up, and the government has a duty to now take care of this person who has been displaced without dealing with the one who took him from his original land? I don't think that is the situation that we should enjoy, an equivalent piece of land. And even if as they occupy this land, to find a way that they will use this land and continue to provide forestation on this land. And Honorable Speaker, I have heard that a lot of my brothers and sisters here have seemed to be taken up by the belief that if one occupies land wrongly and is a squatter on that land and buries some of his relatives on that land, then by
virtue of burying people on this land, then that land should automatically continue to be in your possession. I don't believe in that. I think we have, we have put ourselves in a catch-22 situation, because from the time that the human beings started existing on this earth, human beings have been buried all over, even on this parliament grounds. We do not know which people were buried on these grounds a million years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And if those people were to come and say, we buried our grandfathers here, then it would mean that the whole of the city would have to remove it. So I think this business of saying that we have buried our grandfathers and our children on this land, and therefore we must take this land and continue staying on it, I think it does not make any sense, and we must move away from that kind of argument as fast as possible. And Honorable Speaker, I was just speaking to my brother here, and it is true that probably the former president recommended that these people should be resettled on this land. But the question is, when that recommendation was made, and the people who carried out those recommendations were government officers, the question that this committee should have asked itself, from the time the former president issued that directive, the people who received that directive, how did they carry out that mandate? Did they do a proper analysis to find out, if we do this resettlement, how are we going to do it? Which law are we going to follow? And if they did not follow the law, because the law has always existed, the law of resettlement of people, of settlement of people, of degazettement, of claiming land from forests, converting it into human settlement, has always existed. These people, these deceased, these land officers who settled these people on this land, these are the people who must be held to account. If they did not follow the law, I expect to see in this report that so and so officer did not follow the law, and that officer must be held to account. We must hold these people to account. The people who failed to follow the law, the directives that were issued by the former president, I would like to see them in this report. And that is why I do not agree that the committee has done a thorough job. We must now, as a country, hold proper people to account. If you are given a directive, go and resettle, go and divide a certain piece of land, and you go and divide it outside the known law, and you fail to follow the law, the committee must say, Omulele, or my Honorable Mboko, was the registrar of land at this point of time. And he received this directive from the president, who had authority to issue that directive. But he did not follow the law. And therefore, the person to be held liable is this person. They have not done that in this report. And that is why I say, probably the committee has not done a good job. And we should not be afraid. We must not be afraid. We must not be afraid to knock down buildings just because people have built buildings on the wrong land. If we are going to take up the wrong land, forest land, and we are crying every day that we do not have sufficient water in this country, we do not have sufficient forest cover in this country, and you come and tell us, I have built a school on this land, I have built my beautiful house on this land, I have built a market, a hospital on this land, and therefore you cannot take it. I do not think that is the kind of attitude we should have if we want to develop our country in an orderly way. And there is an office within this land system that is called a planning office. I think there's a fiscal planning office within the land system. Those officers who do fiscal planning, I would have expected the committee to have called the fiscal planner for Kiambu to come and say how he intends and or how he has planned this land to be used. We cannot continue creating slums all over and justifying by saying that since we have buried our ancestors and built houses on this land, we should be allowed to continue staying on it. I disagree.
Member for Laikipia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I take this opportunity to support the report from the Departmental Committee on Lands on complainant which was presented by Committee Amna Forest Squatters Association regarding allocation of land LL number 8390 from Kiambu County. Mr. Speaker, I'm cognizant of the fact that this committee, they tabled very concrete evidence, and also to remind ourselves as a committee member that we invited all the relevant stakeholders, starting from the Ministry of Land, which will comprise part of the physical planners, the surveyors, the registrars, and everybody who was concerned. And also, Mr. Speaker, cognizant that we also took the petition and invited these petitioners, starting with committee squatters, the Committee Development Association, Muungano Committee Group, and the Committee Amna Development Welfare Group, to come and present their petition and their pleas. Indeed, this committee went to Kiambu County to conduct public participation and also to listen to the pleas of the complainants. Mr. Speaker, due to the post-election violence which occurred in the year 1992, the second President of the Republic of Kenya gave a verbal directive that he wanted these quotas to be resettled at the committee forest, which still stands as a part of forest until to date, because the official degazettement, Madam Speaker, has not taken place. Madam Speaker, thereof, as a committee, we feel we have a duty to conduct. And as a house, we owe the people of Kiambu and the squatters of the Committee Amna Forest a duty to make sure that this parcel of land is not taken away by the cartels, but the people who deserved to be resettled as internally displaced persons and also evictees from the 1992 post-election violence from the Rift Valley are settled on this 300 acres parcel of land. Madam Speaker, like we have mentioned as a committee, this land still belongs to the Kenya Forest Service, is yet to be degazetted, and the fact that there are individuals, unscrupulous businessmen, who went ahead to obtain more than 149 title deeds irregularly, and they have taken over that parcel of land, and these IDPs, Madam Speaker, they are still struggling to make their ends meet and to call themselves Kenyans, like His Excellency Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi would have desired. And now that this public pronouncement was made, this is a culture that has continued, because anytime as a committee we dig deep into the issues of historical injustice, you realize, like in Laikipia, we have the issue of the Kwambori squatters, who, Madam Speaker, then the first President of the Republic of Kenya, gave a verbal directive that this should be resettled. And until lately, the National Lands Commission handed over that parcel of land to the KDF, and these people are still languishing in poverty in Nanyuki town. And for us to be in a position to make sure that we bring these problems to an end, we want to ask that if this parcel of land, like we confirmed as a committee, the members of the public have developed, and even government agencies have continued to invest a lot of money in it by building public schools and hospitals, that it is only rightful that this parcel of land, the 300 acres, is degazetted from the Kenya Forest Service and released to the concerned persons, so that we reduce the issues of poverty and also to encourage these people to continue living a decent life. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that the 4 lobby groups which petitioned this House, they agreed to consolidate their list, and the list, the allotee list, they have come up clearly and agreed, and they're only waiting for the government in the next 60 days, once we adopt this report, that the Ministry of Lands and also National Lands Commission and the Ministry of Interior, they are going to work in haste to make sure that these people, they receive their parcels of land. We have had issues of Kehiomwere in Kiambu County and other parts of Murang'a County, where these land matters and other emotive issues which are raised by land ownership, Madam Speaker, has been affecting and has been a matter of security concern, where you realize most people, they lose their life because people continue killing each other, using illicit groups and even others going to extent. The people of Kiambu, the committee land owners, the 4 lobby groups will be given an opportunity to receive their title deeds once the Kenya Forest Service degazette that parcel of land. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the committee and the members for being very supportive, and to also to tell them that it is the interest of the committee to see that we solve all land issues which are brought to our attention, starting with historical land injustices. For purposes of people who may think that we have not done our duties with due diligence, we want to confirm to you that we have sat with the ministry, we have sat even with the Kenya Forest Service, we have done our meetings with the Ministry of Land, and that we cannot again continue taking over the role of the executive, because we must allow them also to do their job. The Ministry of Environment, the CS and the team has appeared before this committee, and they have given us their commitment that once this House adopts this report, they will be kind enough to de-gazette this forest so that the people of Kiambu and the petitioner, Madam Speaker, will start enjoying the decree which was made then by the President. Madam Speaker, I will also be quick to mention that there are a number of times that public pronouncement made by our leaders will always make our people suffer, because unscrupulous traders and cartels and people who sit at our lands offices, they are always waiting for words which are made by us as legislators, or even people who sit in the executive without doing due diligence to see that the process is completed. And for that reason, there is always room and a gap to see that the cartels benefit. If you want to say no to cartels in Kiambu and in the Republic of Kenya, we want to ask you, return this parcel of land by adopting this report to the committee Amna Forest Quarters and the real people who are suffering on the ground, so that this will restore the confidence of Kenyans through this House and the Departmental Committee of Land that we are doing our job, and that our sole job is to protect the interests of Kenyans. Thank you.
Very well. Let me have the member for Seme, the Honorable Nyikal Wambura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute in this. I start, like everybody else, with congratulating the committee for the work they have done, although there's an area where I think they fell short, but generally they have done a good job. To me, the point that is most important, this shows the laxity in our systems of governance, where things can hang on for years, nothing is done. Eventually, people just resort and say, okay, let's sort it out now because a big problem has arisen. People are fighting, people are going to court. But nobody looks at why were things not done before. Madam Speaker, this land was given out by the President in 1994 to people who are displaced, even without going into the issue of where were they displaced from. The provincial administration then, under the provincial commissioner, Mr. Masoga, a long time ago, then gives the correct directives and informs the ministries that should be involved, land, forestry, that these people should be settled in this place. Obviously, the people move in to settle. And when people are settling, definitely the Ministry of Land is aware, the physical planners are aware, the provincial administration then, now the Ministry of Interior are aware, and people move in. Madam Speaker, then schools are built, hostels are built. These are institutions that are planned, that are registered and approved by government officers. They are being built on this land, and nobody is looking at what is the legal status of the land and the people that are staying here. And because of that laxity, Madam Speaker, groups start to struggle. You started with one group of displaced people, and now they go into 3-4 groups. I'm sure when these groups are being formed, they are definitely being registered, they are definitely being assisted or advised by then the provincial administration, and nobody is saying all these groups that are now starting to dispute the land, how have they come into being? Again, they're being registered by government officers. Madam Speaker, then the local Ministry of Lands, the registrar, issues title deeds to some people, 149 people. They are given title deeds issued by an officer of the government of the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. While this is being done, legally the land has not been alienated and has not been degazetted from the Forest Department. How does that happen? The forest officers there, this officer himself, the titles are being given, what processes are being followed? Madam Speaker, that goes on. And therefore, my point is extremely simple, Madam Speaker, that although the committee has done a good recommendation and has stated that the people should be given back the land and all the process followed, which I support, I think there's a major recommendation that has not come in with the other two recommendations. I think even now it is important to go down in history, find out step by step which officers actually neglected their duties and make this thing go to the stage which it has reached now. Wherever these officers are, they still hold responsibility. And I'm sure, like the land registry in Kiambu where this thing was going on, definitely there are officers that had hand-to-hand dealings and the records are there, it can be found. There are always land committees that should meet, the minutes are there, all these can be found. And therefore, Madam Speaker, as we commend the committee for doing a good job, giving us the two recommendations of resettlement, I think they should have gone ahead. And I think the Committee on Lands should actually still follow up this matter and go deeper into this and actually bring individuals who should take responsibility for this mess. Unless we do that, we only correct mistakes, but we do not go to find out who have made the mistakes and sanction them. We'll have a lot of this. But if we take a serious action on one group, a very serious action, people are taken to court if necessary, people are dismissed from their jobs and a good sanction, people will start to work seriously and we'll have less of this. With that, Madam Speaker, I support the report.
You do support the report. Thank you, Honorable Nyikal. The member, a member is on intervention. The Honorable Kurui, the member for SOP. Your intervention.
Yeah.
Yes, member.
Madam Speaker, having seen the mood and having discussed this motion, this matter for a while, I find that the House is in concurrence and I would wish to ask the mover to reply under Standing Order number 95.
Very well, honorable members. The honorable member for Mosop is in order to raise the Standing Order number 95 for the mover to be called upon to reply. And so I put the question to this, which is that the mover be called upon to reply. Will as many as of these opinions say aye? Aye. And as many as of contrary opinions say nay? Or members, the ayes have it. The mover to reply.
Honorable Speaker, I would like to arise to reply. Honorable Speaker, I would like to first of all thank the committee, the Parliamentary Committee on Lands, for the dedication that they normally accord to the work that we do. The Parliamentary Committee on Lands is one of the committees that are receiving many petitions. So I would like to just thank them for being there when we visited Committee ANMA, for availing themselves for all the meetings that we interacted with various stakeholders, including the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Environment, Kenya Forest Services, Ministry of Interior, as we interacted with them on the ground, among others. I would like to thank them for that. Also, I would like to thank them for the time that we took before we wrote this report, for the interaction that they did with the documents. Necessary to sit in this house and to wait to be given time to make contributions. Madam Speaker, this matter is straightforward because the communications from various institutions within the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning then, and also the government of the day, are clear that the intention was there to settle the squatters. And I would like to say that this is a matter that needs to be settled once and for all. This place is a source of insecurity in the area. When you hear people are being murdered in committee, vehicles being dismantled, this happens in this area. And I would like to say that it's a matter that the Ministry of Interior was clear
that they would like to handle. So, Honorable Speaker, I really would not like to repeat the discussion that has been done, the debate that has been done by members here. Let me take this opportunity to thank the dedication, to thank the staff, the Secretariat of the Parliamentary Committee of Lands, and also the legal team from Parliament for the support that they gave us when we were handling this matter. We would not have done it the way we did it if we didn't have the guidance that we got from them. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank all the members that have contributed and to say that I see a possibility, because the House may adopt this report, that this matter of committee ANMA and the anguish that the squatters have gone through will be brought to an end. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and with those remarks, I reply.
You reply. Honourable members, from where I sit, I confirm that the House is not properly constituted for us to be able to put the question to the report on the inquiry into allocation of land in committee, forest. And so I do order that the question to the report will be put in the next sitting as it will be allocated in our order paper. Next. Next order.
Order number 16, motion. Report on a meeting to promote and popularize the ratification of the protocol on the free movement of persons and its implementation roadmap. Resumption of debate interrupted on Tuesday, March 19, 2019.
Other members, from the record we have is that this report was debated, and what was remaining is for the mover to reply. And so I do call upon the mover to reply, the chairperson, Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And indeed, this motion has been on the floor since March this year, and the members have really ventilated and debated on it. And I want to reply very briefly, just inform the House that this motion is about the promotion and the popularization of a protocol which is on the free movement of persons and its implementation roadmap. And Madam Speaker, this is an African Union protocol, proposed protocol, because it has not yet come into force. And according to the agreement in the African Union, it will come into force when 15 states ratify it. And this report is about a conference that myself and another member of my committee, plus the Foreign Affairs of Ministry and also a representative from the Attorney General, attended in Dakar, Senegal. And it was of two African economic blocs. That is the Economic Community of West African States and the East African Community. The first one having 15 members, and the East African Community having 6 members. So all of them coming to 21. And it was just a lobbying to see whether those 21 states, at least a quorum of 15, could be achieved for the ratification of the protocol. So it's just to put record straight, Madam Speaker, there is no protocol before the House because the executive have not yet brought to the House in the, through the right procedure. So we are just reporting for members to be aware or create awareness that there is need to popularize the ratification of this protocol on the free movement of persons and its implementation roadmap. And Madam Speaker, we all know that the African continent is becoming a borderless, a seamless continent, whereby if we are talking of the Confederation of Free African Trade, Therefore, there is need for people to really move across these imaginary boundaries that were brought by the colonialists. And so, Madam Speaker, I really want to inform the House that it's good that members be aware of this protocol, and we call upon the executive to bring this protocol to the House so that an implementation roadmap can be adopted and ratified as required by the Constitution and our laws, that is the treaty-making laws or act, and then if 15 states could ratify it within the African Union, then it will come into force. And I want to thank members who really contributed on this motion in support of it, and looking forward to this protocol coming to the House so that it can be debated and the roadmap approved for its implementation thereof. I beg to reply.
Very well, you beg to reply. Again, honorable members, the same account on the Constitution of the House. We are not able to put the question to the reports on the meeting to promote, popularize the ratification of the protocol on the free movement of persons and its implementation roadmap. I order that the question to this will be put in the next sitting, as it will be in our order paper. Next.
Order number 17, motion, Senate amendments to the Public-Private Partnerships Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 52 of 2017.
The leader of majority party. I'm aware the leader of majority party is in a meeting, in consultation. Honorable Kato, you want?
Madam Speaker, I was just going to seek your indulgence that you defer this motion to a later date when the leader of majority will be ready to move it, because he's, as you have said, he's in another meeting.
Very well. Thank you. Given his position, we are aware that he's in a meeting. And so, honorable members, I do order that the same be deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion, report on the agreement between the government of the Republic of Kenya and the government of the Italian Republic on the Luigi Broglio Malindi Space Center.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Very well.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I beg to move the following motion that this House adopts a report of the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations on its consideration of the agreement between the government of the Republic of Kenya and the government of the Italian Republic on the Luigi Broglio Malindi Space Center, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 26th June, 2019. Madam Speaker, this is a very important motion that really would have loved to move when this House is full to its capacity, because I know it has a lot of implication in terms of the economy, the technology, and a lot of things to this country. But having said that, Madam Speaker, let me say that the Luigi Broglio Malindi Space Center, formerly referred to as the San Marcos Satellite Launching and Tracking Station, is located in Ngomeni Village, which is in Magarini constituency, Kilifi County. It was established in 1962, and by then, what was referred to as the Royal Technical College of Nairobi, now the University of Nairobi, it was the one that signed the agreement with the University of Rome on behalf of their respective government, that is Kenya, the Republic of Kenya and the Italian Republic. The agreement was ratified by the two Kenyan and Italian government in 1964, just immediately after independence. And it has been renewed several times. First, renewal was in April 1st, 1987, which was meant to establish the National Space Secretariat, which was under the Ministry of Defense. Another renewal was done in March 1995, that was on 14th of that March, and the renewal was meant to extend a period for a further 15 years, which expired on 14th March 2010. That validity was again extended up to December 31st, 2011, which was to allow for further negotiation between the parties. And again, on 5th June 2012, the validity of the agreement was further extended. It was meant for parties to conclude a new comprehensive agreement, which was meant for the cooperation on space matters. And together with the implementing agreements, because that was now the time that the implementing agreements came in. And this agreement has now been submitted to the House for ratification since that time. Madam Speaker, let me just briefly explain several articles, very important articles in this agreement. There is Article 2, which actually talked about or outlined the extent and the use of the Space Center. And this center is defined as consisting of a mobile segment at sea for tracking and launching satellites and suborbital platform, and for space research at where it is called Ugawana Bay, and a land-based segment at Ngomeni. So basically, the center is about launching and tracking satellites at sea. And the Space Center is to be used for aerospace science, space science, and technology and research and applications, as well as tracking and monitoring space vehicles, navigation, and any other activity mutually agreed upon by the parties. And it's only to be used for peaceful purposes. The Article 3 of the agreement provides for other areas of cooperation between the two governments. And the Italian government commits, one, to support the enhancement of the capacity of the Kenyan Space Agency. Madam Speaker, it's worth noting that now we have a National Space Agency authority domiciled under the Ministry of Defense. And this is the one that the Italian government commits under this agreement, that they will support the enhancement of the capacity of that Kenyan Space Agency. Number two, another commitment by the Italian government is to train Kenyan nationals identified by the government of Kenya in aerospace, space science and technology, defense courses, and scholarship for training in other disciplines. Third is enhance the capacity of public institutions of higher learning in Kenya to train persons in space science and technology. University of Nairobi is one of those public institutions of higher learning that need to be supported in terms of capacity building for purposes of these courses on technology and space science. Also, in conjunction with the Kenyan government, the Italian government committed to support the development of the Ngomeni area of Kilifi County, that area in Malindi, as a CSR need for several community projects that need to be done because of like the tarmacking of the roads around that area. There was the establishment of a health facility and so on as the need arises. Actually, this has been done previously through the Coast Development Authority that serves that region. Madam Speaker, the two governments also commits to establish a regional center for Earth observation in Kenya to receive, store, process, and disseminate remotely sensed data. This is very critical. That Earth observation regional center, it's going to be for the whole region, and it will be based in Kenya, and their purpose is to receive, to store, and to process and disseminate remotely sensed data. And the foregoing areas of cooperation are to be actualized through the signing of what I mentioned earlier, implementing agreements between the implementing agencies of the two countries. And the implementing agreements are annexed to the agreement which we tabled previously as part of the report of the committee. There is Article 4, which provide the establishment of a joint council of ministers, as it is the supreme organ actually, responsible for strategic policy guidance for the operation of the Space Center and identify areas of cooperation. The Council of Ministers comprised of the ministers that the two parties designate. Like for instance, in Kenya, it's going to be the minister responsible for defense, and in the Italian government, it's going to be the minister responsible for education, research, and university. And this council will hold at least 2 meetings in a year and may convene on the request of the Joint Steering Committee. There is Article 5, Madam Speaker, which is now the Joint Steering Committee, just below the Joint Council of Ministers. And this comprises of principal secretaries of the respective ministries, now together with the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of the respective space agencies of the two countries. And this Joint Steering Committee is charged with steering the implementation of the agreement and considers and approve programs and plans and financial affairs of the center. It will be chaired alternately by the respectives or the representative of both countries, and is to meet in Kenya or Italy at least once in a year. And then Article 6 of the agreement establishes the Joint Management Board that is now below the Joint Steering Committee, and this will comprise of the 3 technical persons designated by each country. This is now basically the management, routine management of the center. And each country may also adopt or co-opt advisors into the board. And the board will meet at least 3 times in every financial year, and it is to be chaired on a rotational basis between the countries every 2 years. And this board will now oversight the operation of the Space Center and the welfare of its staff. And then Article 7 is about the management of the Space Center, whereby the Chief Executive Officer of the center is appointed by the Italian government through its space agency, and this CEO will be in charge of day-to-day management of the center and convening of the board meetings. Madam Speaker, some of the improvement of the old agreement is that in this case now we are going to have a deputy CEO unlike before, and this deputy CEO of the center will be appointed by the government of Kenya to deputize the CEO in all aspects except when it comes to making financial commitments for the center. Both governments, that is Italian and the Kenyan government, may second professionals staff to the center in consultation with the board in agreed capacities. And non-professional staff are to be recruited from amongst the qualified Kenyans. That is for non-professional. And then when you go to Article 8 of the agreement, this now sets the prerogatives and obligations of the Italian government. There are so many, I'll just mention about 3. One, which is the improvement of the new agreement, the one we are debating if ratified by this House. The commitments, which I'm saying they are now improved from the old one, is one, they will pay the Kenyan government US dollars $250,000 annually for the use of the land used by the sender, subject to an increment of the sum of US dollars 50,000 every 5 years. 2, they will pay compensation for any additional land acquired. 3, remit to the government of Kenya 50% of the profits of contracts with the third parties for the commercial services provided by the sender, with the exception of cooperation agreements in which there is no exchange of funds. And the fourth one, there are so many actually, there are over 10. The fourth one is the Italian government will collect and remit to the government of Kenya an annual authorization fee of US dollars 50,000 from each third party for the use of the sender, which is to be reviewed every 5 years during the period of the agreement. So there are so many of them, like promoting development projects in the community of Ngomeni, catering for the operating cost of the day-to-day functioning of the sender and its space and activities and programs as approved. And when you go to Article 9, now it now sets out the prerogatives and the obligation of the government of Kenya. And some of them are as follows. There are also many, I will just mention few, because they are in the report that we tabled and also in the agreement. Some are, the Kenyan government commits to receive and consider within a reasonable time programs submitted within a reasonable time, programs submitted by the Joint Committee, and where accepted, grant the necessary authorization for the program to start. The Kenyan government also commits, in consultation with the Italian government, to identify its training needs and personnel to undergo the training. And also, the third one is to undertake all the necessary measures to ensure the effective functioning of the center. So several of them, there are so many, like in consultation with the Italian government, the Kenyan government will identify development projects to be realized within Malindi, where the center is based. And the Kenyan government will do it through the normal channels, like as I said earlier, Coast Development Authority is one of the national government agencies for implementing development projects, which will be very key to the development of this area through this space center. It will also take all measures to facilitate entry, stay, and exit from Kenya for the personnel of the Italian government employed in Kenya for purposes related to the objects of this agreement, and among others. Madam Speaker, as I move to conclude, I would also wish to refer to Article 17, whereby it provides for the modalities of its entry into force, duration, and termination. The agreement is to come into force on the receipt of the last notification form, the last notification from the parties indicating their respective internal procedures have been complied with. Of course, in terms of the agreements have been signed, but each state has got its own internal procedures that are recognized and accepted by law. And once the last notification is received that those internal procedures have been followed, then the agreement will come into force. For instance, in the case of Kenya, such a notification will be to the effect that the agreement...
Because the Italians have really benefited from this. And when you go to Italy, when you tell them you're coming from Kenya, the first thing they talk about is about Malindi. When you go to Malindi, there are so many Italians who have settled there because of this particular project. Mr. Speaker, this project, when in the Italian government, it is under Education, Ministry of Education and Science and Research. Here is under the defense. And we argued last time that it should be transferred to the Ministry of Education so that the universities can benefit in terms of partnership for that research in the space technology. But here, we don't know why it is still under defense. Because I think we should look for a way so that it can move away from this defense, so that it goes to the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and whatever we are talking about, the nuclear, the space, so that there's a strategic partnership, so that there's that transfer of technology. Because he has mentioned, One of the benefits is technological transfer. Technological transfer to who? Those people who are cooks, who work there as the low cadre level. The technological transfer is negligible. We should have our scientists to work at that top level, Mr. Speaker, so that they can be able to gain that technological transfer. When you talk of CSR, Mr. Speaker, out of this you are building 2 classrooms. What the hell is that? If it was a CSR with a specific threshold of this amount of money, we'll say we are getting something. And that's why I'm insisting this is a parasitic relationship where our country is losing at the expense of the Italians. So I wish as we move forward, and the relevant minister who is there, they can be able to renegotiate. Otherwise, this is not proper representation of our country, Mr. Speaker. I'm a bit tired because I've just come from Trans Nzoia giving a presentation to the BBI as far as reforms in this country are concerned, Mr. Speaker. And now, when I was just coming, I've had a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, the Senate, the National Assembly. You know, this sibling rivalry has to stop. We either learn to live together as brothers or we perish together as fools. And you want to strengthen the Senate, let it be an upper house. Maybe it'll make things. You know, in the motion, you can also say something that is relevant, Honorable Charles, and I expect you to know that because you are my senior. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the committee for the good work they've done, and please be able to go and negotiate so that you can have a better return to our country, but otherwise you've done good work, and I support the report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Honorable Twitwek, member for Mogotio.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to share on this agreement.
The Honorable Gikaria, there's nothing out of order. Proceed.
Thank you, speakers. I'll just contribute and there'll be more time for my colleague here. First, I'd like to say that the issue of space science is a very key, useful area of study. I think the great nations of the US and USSR or the Russia and even China now are spending a lot in the area of space science. Space science contributes a lot towards giving us a lot of information in this sector. And therefore, this agreement between the Italian government and Kenya government on the Luigi Broglio Space Center is very important to Kenya. I know I've had a few of my colleagues saying that we may not have received a lot of benefits from this center, but I think the fact that this center has been going on for the last 15 years, over 15, from the early years up to now, it means the center has some usefulness in terms of contribution to this nation. First of all, if you look at the agreement, it talks a lot about training, it talks a lot about capacity building, it talks a lot about the necessary transfer of technology between from Italian government to us. It talks about scholarships. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this particular agreement is a very good agreement. I know I've had a few people saying maybe it is one-sided. The only reservation I can say is we've not really seen in detail the benefits of this collaboration. But I think reading the list, looking at the listing which is given here, in the area in which the collaboration will continue in this space center, aerospace engineering and technology, Earth observation and navigation, space policy, telecommunication, telemedicine. These are very important areas, Mr. Speaker, sir, that if this space center is going to transfer to the Kenyans, it will be useful. I know it is under the Ministry of Defense, but looking at it critically, it should actually be under the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, because a lot of the issues which are going on in the Space Center touches on training, it touches on research, specifically the data which is being harnessed or rather being obtained from this Space Center. It tells us that it should actually be housed or the home or domiciled in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. The fact that we've not really transferred this particular center also is something which also calls for looking into. I think it's been a long time since this particular space center has been in operation. I know the Italian government has put in a lot of resources there. But I think also there should be research, R&D, or rather research and development towards empowering Kenyans to also take over in this particular center. I'm sure I've heard of my colleagues saying this has been a one-sided contribution, or rather one-sided benefit to one country. But I think we need to hear more, because looking at the idea that this needs to be continued, the agreement needs to be supported if there's going to be a lot of benefits, especially in the area of meteorology. Right now, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are actually getting frequent challenges in terms of weather. I was in Mombasa this last weekend, and you cannot believe me, Mombasa was very cold, and the seas was very rough. And I think it tells us the weather patterns are changing. We are hearing about climate change a lot. We are experiencing extreme weathers in terms of either extreme rainfall, or we are also seeing extreme weather conditions in terms of hot weather. Even the expected, last year we had extreme cases of rivers drying. So I think the issue of using this center to enable us to study the atmospheric areas, to give us a forward-looking at the weather, early warning systems. And these are the things which we want this center to be giving us. And therefore, we believe that going forward, I would expect this particular center to focus on more collaboration with our technical universities, with our institutions which are dealing with prediction of weather, farming communities, because we believe that the successful nations like the US have really used space technology to their advantage. Right now, as they get various difficult weathers like the hurricanes and all that, it is because of the studies on meteorological using advanced technology in the space that has saved life. And therefore, we expect this space center, which is called Luigi, Broglio, or San Mago, to be useful to this country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to support that this particular collaboration continue, and I support the agreement of the committee. Thank you.
The Honorable Gikari, a member for Nakuru East.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to support the ratification of this very important treaty. Honorable Speaker, in the last Parliament, as Honorable Chris Omalo just walked out, as I've indicated, I was the Vice Chair of the Implementation Committee. And one of the tasks that the committee was given is to start following up the aspect of the agreement that had already expired in 2010. And we were making a follow-up, Honorable Speaker, for us to be able, as a committee, to be able to see. And rightfully, as Honorable Amalo has said, and this we will be asking the committee, I don't know whether the committee has an opportunity of going to amend. When we were trying to get as to who will sit and discuss on matters to do with the agreements and agree on some of the aspects we were told is the Ministry of Defense. And I want to agree with Honorable Malo. Honorable Speaker, in this country, and there was that very huge debate as to, do we leave this very important institution to the Ministry of Defense? And what we mean is that even by visiting St. Marcos, as it was known then, actually I was asking the chair of Defense as to why they thought of changing the name. And of course, Honorable Chris Omala has alluded to the fact that these are scientists too. But it's St. Marcos, as is commonly known in the country, a very important institution for this country. But it's most unfortunate, Honorable Speaker, that information is collected in this country, and the neutrality of the Malindi Space Center being in Malindi, a better place than any other place in the world. We have this kind of space in Japan, we have it in China, we have it even in the US. But the Malindi one is the most convenient in terms of real-time information, that whatever is sent in this space and the information that is collected, it is so factual and so real from Malindi than it would be in other places. And that's how important, and I'm saying, and I totally agree, 250,000, although the chair was saying we receive actually peanuts, but 250, 25 million in a year with an additional 50,000 in after every 5 years, it is peanuts. Because as a committee, we did interrogate the then management that was there. And you could not believe it, how much they earn from information that they sell. And I want to agree with Daktari. It is not about research on it. It's not about defense. It's not about our security. But it's about so much that we can be able to collect and that information. In fact, by then we had a discussion in Parliament about the drought that was there in the last Parliament, if you remember. And this technology will be able to give you, early warnings that within the next 2 years, we'll be having drought. So you better start preparing you within, and it was giving a lot of information, and particularly, and this we are saying, even again for defense purpose, we were coming up with building a wall, I don't know, the Kenya-Somali wall, and in that space they were telling us now they have a technology that does only give you an image. Actually, it gives you a face of a human being who is, operating in an area with an intention. So you can be able to use the satellite to be able to even use it along the Kenya-Somali border to be able to see the activities that are going there on 24/7. So we are saying that the information that this Italian firm or the St. Marcos then that was selling to the third party, they were receiving so much money, but what we were getting, and we anticipated that this agreement that we are talking about now could be able to address some of those. Take, for example, Honorable Speaker, the people who are trained out of an executive or top management of that institution, 12 by then. We had only one Kenyan. A person who was, by coincidence again, was coming from the same constituency where Mheshimiwa Kombe was represented, I think he's Magarini. And Honorable Speaker, out of 12 managers, only one Kenyan. Here we are talking about the CEO who will be appointed by the Italian government. And for purpose of day-to-day running of the institution. And look at the business that our Kenyan deputy CEO has been given. Very small managerial positions of, doing clerical work. I think it is important when they were negotiating, as the CEO, who is appointed by the Italian government and given on a day-to-day basis the management of that, then we needed to negotiate that he shouldn't be doing that alone. He should be doing with the deputy CEO who is appointed by the Kenyan government. And that is going to give us an overview of exactly, you can't believe it, Honorable Speaker, that we collect information in Kenya. It is sent to China, it is sent to the US, and then it is given back to us now. Because the information that is collected there, it is in more scientific nature that we cannot be able to interpret ourselves. Honorable Speaker, I think that is where we go wrong. That we have to wait for the Americans to tell us in 2 years we are going to have drought, or there is an intended attack by these people because from whatever the observation that they are getting. Honorable Speaker, and we have indicated that we have one center, I think it's called What here in Embakasi, and we are saying then that information, much as it's that scientific mode of information that is sent to the US, China, wherever, and then now it is now translated into simple English that is sent to us, why can't we also be sent so that we can have our experts, the very same people we are saying who are learning these things, who are taken to go and learn about these things, can be able now to take over after the agreement. I can see the agreement will be expiring 15 years from now. Honorable Speaker, it is important for us to have more trained personnel, who we have now, who can be stationed, not only for the CEO, and maybe we are being told that that joint, is it the council, Joint Council of Ministers, are the ones who are going to indicate the senior management that is going to be working in that space center. And we are told most of them will be coming from outside the country. And yet we have people who have been trained to go to that. And Honorable Speaker, if you look at what the CEO's duties are, and it is also limited, except the making of financial commitments. You can imagine that the CEO, the deputy CEO, cannot interfere with the financial commitment of the center. What does it mean? Then as a country, we will not be knowing how much we are making from this institution so that we can be able to make an informed decision as to whether do we negotiate for more, or if we are left out of the financial commitment or decisions of that center, then, Honorable Speaker, I think will be the other aspect, and this is something that is also the responsibility that has been given to the Italian government. And one of them is to undertake training programs. Honorable Speaker, honestly speaking, is it that only Italians can be able to train us on the space matters? Why can't we be able to do it for ourselves? Or is it because, and this training, is it because they are the tutors, or is it because they are the financiers of these students? This country cannot be able to train its own people using its own resources so that, again, they are not curtailed, they are not stopped from being able to understand further. Because if we go, for example, in Italy, they might decide to be a little bit, not to give us the truth about, the whole truth about what we are supposed to. And Honorable Speaker, much as the agreement has its own things, I want to agree the remitting of one of the facts is that the Italian government is supposed to remit to the Kenya government 50% of the profits of contracts with the, and I think that is one of the best. The last time we were there, we were receiving nothing other than the little, and I think the 50% that we are given is something that is there. The other aspects, of course, I don't know whether we should go by the protocol that we want to agree, or we are going to follow the due process of the Kenyan laws. Particularly on any person who is coming, he must get a work permit, just like it's stipulated in the relevant law. So again, if we leave this.
Honorable Gikaria, I hope, yes, very well. The Honorable Nyika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the mover that this is probably something that should have been presented with a full house. It's extremely important because if you look at the value of space science and aeronautical engineering, is the modern thing now. And if you look at it, the defense is a major factor, and that is really what makes America such a powerful nation. It is actually the defense which is actually related to their knowledge in space and aeronautical engineering. And the information that they can transmit. Americans can now fight another country without even moving there. They can fight from home using guided satellites and so on. And this is the area we are. And if you look at the issue aeronauticals, science and exploration, people are already planning whether they can live in other planets. People are already planning whether they can mine in other planets. People are already planning whether we can have space tourism. In fact, there is already a program where rich people are actually buying space in aeronautical ships to go into space tourism. And so we have to be with them at that level. If you look at the issue of communication and remote sensing, basically people can plan what they want to do inside this building when they are sitting in the US or in Russia, because they can censor, as the honorable member was saying, even the number of people who are in this assembly now. So that kind of information and communication is key. And then in the management of the environment, these people, this is where you get the information to censor the melting glaciers, the sea levels, the rising temperatures, and what it is going to do where, the certifications, the volcanoes that will erupt where. They have information, tremendous information. And I think that is what they are really sensing. Even the future change of flora and fauna, where what will grow, that information we'll get from here. Even just day-to-day civil aviation, tremendous information. When you talk of the weather, these people can monitor storms, these people can monitor earthquakes, these people can monitor tsunamis, and they get this information all over the world. And I think a lot of it is coming from where we are. And not only that, the information that comes from this science is actually used in civilian life. If you go into medicine, a lot of the instruments that we use now actually are a product of space science that come as a byproduct. We can use this thing here. You can use it in agriculture. You can even use it in even road engineering. So this is the place where we should be. So definitely, we need this space here, this institution here. But I think what is coming out, the institution is in the country, but I think we are playing a minute role in it, so that we do not getting the full advantage of what we should get. To me, even the rent they're paying for the land is nothing. We could actually give that land for free, but are we part and parcel of what is happening there, the information that is being sold, and translating that information into our own civilian use? So I think I agree that we need to look at how we can organize ourselves. And the one major thing, Chair, that I think we have to look at, where we are running short and where they're actually beating us, is where we are spaced. On their side, this is in the universities, this is in science and technology. We have put it in defense in this place. I think that has to move. I know it can't be done immediately. And the defense, our defense as we know it now, I don't think they have such tremendous academic orientation and research orientation that they can match these people that are actually doing this as a major research in space exploration and science. I don't think we even have the money in our defense department to do that. So I think this has to just move to the universities. The defense must be part of it, because the translation of the information and the science to use in defense is important, but only if you have the technology. So I think we should move that, and that should be a major issue to look at. If you look at the history, they are taking very long agreement of very long durations, 15, 10. I think that's another area that we should look at. We should shorten the period. And shortening the period means you can always begin better and start learning. And therefore, for me...
The Honorable Nyikal, I must now interrupt you because of the earlier directions by the Speaker that we shall discuss the matter that was raised by the Honorable Nangabo. You have a balance of 3 minutes when this matter is again set down for consideration, but in accordance with the directions that were earlier given by the Honorable Speaker, business will be interrupted under our Standing Order 43, so that the Honorable Nangabo, member for Trans Nzoia, can prosecute her inquiry into the pensions issue. The Honorable Nangabo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to pursue my statement. Pursuant to Standing Order 43, I wish to make a statement regarding streamlining the pension system in the country. Honorable Speaker, a timely call of saving for retirement is to plan for your future expenses. And it is believed that approximately 11% of Kenyans rely on pension scheme after retirement.
Therefore, the remaining 89% of the employees have no pension plan, making the pension saving in the country to fall below bar. It is also of the concern that many pensioners and their next of kin will not know how much was incurred during the employment period, and furthermore, follow up their benefits, especially by the next of kin, is a big challenge. And it has taken a period in the same reported cases, even up to a period of more than 12 years to resolve the leading to the loss of their life and the properties. I therefore urge the government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, to streamline the system so as to enable the retirees to enjoy their time after serving the community in different capacity. Mr. Speaker, it has just come to my notice that most of the retirees who have been serving this country, they are really suffering outside there. So many of them, like those ones who are working with Kenya Airways, those who are civil servants from various ministries, they have really, most of them, they have really stayed in a very poor life that it has caused even some of them to lose their lives. And now when it comes to the next of kin, this next of kin don't know how much maybe their father or mother, the time she or he was working, how much did he incur by that time? So now it has taken a long period. So I'm requesting my fellow colleagues to ventilate on this issue so that we can save the retirees outside there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I used to be a civic leader to one of a municipal council. We had this money called lab trust fund, whereby we used to save that money, and after the retirement or after the period that we were and their children have not even gone to school. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm urging my fellow colleagues so that we can pursue this issue here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Hulu for order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to support what Honorable Member has presented. Actually, it's unfortunate that our retirees, those who have served this country in different professions, when they retire, it becomes very difficult for them to get what is due to them. More often than not, as members of parliament, from time to time, we are required to make a follow-up with the pensions, the institution which is managing pension for public service. So streamlining pension, I think, is something which is very important. From the time the county government came into force, there has been a lot of confusion, as to what happens to those who have been on previous scheme, for example, with the civic authorities. We have also had bills in this house, which we have debated, but I fully agree with the member that streamlining of pension is something that we need to consider as members of this August House. There are a lot of issues when it comes to pension, and the delay in payment of the dues. Once the monthly income that a civil servant is entitled to has been stopped after attaining the mandatory retirement age, normally it takes time before the pension is processed. And most of the times, most of our workers actually pass on in the process of, following their pensions and so on and so forth. And sometimes the next of kin have no knowledge on how they can follow up. They do not have knowledge on terms of, what their entitlement is. And therefore, I think this discussion is very timely. It's something that we need to think through and try to see how best we can harmonize the various laws, including the ones which we have passed recently, so that we can actually make sure that our retirees do not suffer the effect of delayed pension payments and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this, Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very important issue. In a country where the employment is low to begin with, formal employment as we know it, and where the data that we have is indicating that even that low employment, only 11% of the people actually have some retirement arrangement. It means that a lot of people, even those who are working, live in anxiety and fear of old age. And Mr. Speaker, I think for productivity, even when you are still in the strong productive age, it's affected if you are unsure of the future. So I think it is important for productivity, not just for improving the life of people, but for productivity, that we have a proper system, social security system, that looks at all people in the retirement age. If somebody has done any work, there should be some benefit. And even where there's benefit, Mr. Speaker, there's so much poor information as to what people actually are worth at the time they're retiring in terms of their pension. Worse still, when they become incapacitated and are not able to access it, even their next of kin are not able to help them. Somebody who had benefits dies, and the family, the wife and the children who are there, actually go into poverty while they have a lot of, they have some funds kept where. That's where you are hearing of unclaimed assets. The vast majority of unclaimed assets are actually people who retired and nobody can follow up their benefits. So we need a system. And Mr. Speaker, even those who are alive, just claiming and receiving that benefit from the time you retire to the time you start receiving the benefit, whether it comes in lump sum and then in monthly installment, all these are not properly done. So people suffer. It is therefore important that our social security system, through the Ministry of Labor, and in particular, the Retirement Benefits Authority should take this matter up and make sure that, one, we expand it, two, we streamline it, so that those who are entitled benefit, those who do not have any entitlement, we find ways of expanding so that they're excluded. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I support this statement.
The Honorable Mwangaza Kawira, member for Meru.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I want to support my sister Janet for the issue about the retirees, and I crisis, Mr. Speaker, and majority of Kenyans are now opting to invest in property